Ecological consequences of keystone species loss in marine ecosystems. These are some of the concepts we're going to be talking about today. First, keystone species, then an example with sea otters, an example with ring seals, and then the conclusions. Keystone species have a disproportionately large effect on the ecosystem relative to their abundance. Usually, they influence an ecosystem's food web. Keystone species use different mechanisms to create stability within their ecosystem. Some of these mechanisms include controlling the distribution of other species, controlling the physical aspects of their ecosystem, and controlling species gene flow. Predators, like the sea otter, regulate prey species distribution, population, and behavior through hunting. Herbivores, like the elephants, control an ecosystem's physical and biological aspects by eating particular plant species. Some species, usually pollinators like bees, work together as mutualists to help maintain gene flow and dispersal through their ecosystems. When these species are removed, the ecosystem can become unstable, causing trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is where a change in one species has an effect on all other trophic levels in the food web. This can happen with top predators, called a top-down control, or with primary producers, called a bottom-up control. Now we're going to discuss two examples exploring how the removal or behavioral change in keystone species affects their ecosystems. The first example is with sea otters. Sea otters are keystone species in kelp forest ecosystems. They feed on sea urchins, keeping their populations in check. During the Pacific Maritime Fur Trade, sea otters were hunted to the brink of extinction. The loss of sea otters caused the top-down trophic cascade, which massively removed kelp from the ecosystem. Without the predation of sea otters, sea urchin populations were able to grow and feed on the kelp. This overgrazing led to massive kelp removal and the ecosystem changing from the biodiverse kelp forest ecosystem to the urchin barren depicted in this image. Around the same time, the Steller sea cow was hunted to extinction. The Steller sea cow was a species of sirenian that fed primarily on the top layers of the kelp forest. Some studies suggest that the trophic cascade caused by the decline in sea otter population aided in their extinction by removing their main food source, the kelp. Without these sea cows, kelp ecosystems show reduced ecological resistance when stressed by things like disease and ocean warming. The ecosystem has a harder time responding to these stressors compared to when the sea cows were presently feeding on the kelp. The second example is with ringed seals in the Arctic. Ringed seals are essential for the health of the Arctic food web, linking lower trophic levels to apex predators. They feed primarily on polar cod and act as primary prey for many apex predators. With sea ice decreasing from climate change, ringed seals are seen to be changing their hunting from sympagic feeding, which relies on ice-associated prey, to pelagic and benthic feeding modes, where they feed deeper in the water column. These behavioral changes are making the seals travel further distances, dive for longer, and spend less time resting on ice. These factors are energetically demanding and have unknown effects on the seals. Additionally, with the seals spending more time feeding in deeper waters away from shore, they have less spatial overlap with their primary predator, polar bears. Due to the declining sea ice, as discussed, polar bears have less spatial overlap with their main prey, the ringed seals. This is causing them to turn to alternative hunting techniques. Historically, bears hunted ringed seals from sea ice platforms. Because of the loss in sea ice, the bears are turning to aquatic stalking, where they hunt for the seals in the water instead of from the ice. This technique is energetically taxing for the bears and not very efficient, as the ringed seals are much faster at maneuvering in the water. The other hunting technique the bears are trying is turning to ground nesting bird colonies as an alternate food source. Polar bears are arriving at these colonies before the breeding season, with some colonies experiencing greater than 90% nest predation. While the long-term impact on Arctic bird populations remain uncertain, this behavioral change demonstrates the potential for ecosystem-wide reorganization. As seen with these two examples, human interference with keystone species has demonstrated extensive and often cascading consequences for marine ecosystems. The disruption of keystone foraging dynamics results in less predictable, more vulnerable ecosystems. With the sea otter example, their exploitation was targeted. The resulting impacts on the kelp forest ecosystem shows the vulnerability of such systems to targeted human actions. In the Arctic, the climate-driven habitat alteration is shifting the behavior of the key species, the ringed seal. The resultant impacts on the ecosystem show the vulnerability of predator-prey dynamics and how human interference can negatively impact an entire ecosystem. Here are the references for my presentation. Thank you.